I'm Out of Here, read by Tuli Mashazi. Getting away from the routine of lectures and library visits was a welcome break for Tendo. He had worked hard for the whole year, and all his hard work had paid off. Now it was time to break away from the treadmill of varsity life and visit his humble family. That was all that was on his mind as he packed his few belongings to go home for the end of first year. He had forgotten how excited he was when he left home to go and live in res. For the first time in his life, he had his own room and enjoyed privacy, a thing he had never known existed. Their little house was home to his mom's entire family and their children. Everything happened in full view of everyone, good or bad. It was a miracle how Tendo had turned out and made it to varsity with the kind of activities that happened in his house. As he approached the gate, the familiar sounds and smells welcomed him. Music was loud, but he could not tell which song was playing. Most likely You Masegela, because he was the family favorite. Or was it the only musician they could all listen to without arguing about his musical prowess? Brayu was a perfect musician in this home, from the message, the arrangement, to his wholesome voice. Any other musician did not stand a chance. But he did not miss the loud banter and the incessant arguing over mundane stuff. His uncle's loud slur overpowered the music. He was standing on his feet, shouting out loud, motioning with his hands to emphasize his point while he tried to maintain balance. His tiny voice did not match his huge frame, and it was always fun when he got drunk and started talking a lot, even though it annoyed Tendo because his arguments were never valid, nor meaningful. But that was the family he had grown to love. Ngane, his mother's young sister, sat in the corner barefoot as always. She was fumbling through her chest for a snuff box with her gnarly fingers that had been hit by arthritis after spending most of her meaningful years working emakishini for Madame Botha. She was shouting a counter-argument at Uncle Spola. One of them was willing, none of them was willing to listen to the other. And so the fusion of music and argument carried on while Tendo stood at the doorway, feeling invisible, as he had always felt in this house. His sweet grandmother was sprawled on the floor, downing the usual drink of the family, quite oblivious of the argument between the two children. She dug into her apron and pulled out a cigarette and matches and continued to light up and draw a deep smoke and then let out a cloud that filled up the house. That cloud of smoke added ambiance to the theatrics between Uncle Spola and Ngani. Everybody else who filled the dark house just inhaled the smoke in silence. She was adorable, he thought, as she sat there like an ancient well of wisdom. It was her sacrifices and support that had seen him through school, because his own mother had abandoned her family for what she hoped would be a better life. The life she had hoped to find had taken longer to find her, and so she had continued to search for it. 10 years later, she had not returned home or called just to find out how everyone at home was doing, not even her own two children. That wrinkled old lady had become the only mother Tendo knew, hence his endless love for her. He wanted to run and kiss her wrinkled old cheeks, but the house was like a sea of bodies he could not swim across. It was his cousin who saw him first. She smiled timidly and waved at him to acknowledge his arrival. Then she signaled with her hands to the two feuding siblings. There was a helplessness in her smile, as if this was a usual occurrence and the poor children were hostages of it. Tendo felt better because he was at the door and he could escape if they started fighting, as that was the usual epilogue of their debates. Uncle moved his big foot and kicked down a bottle, emptying its contents onto the thirsty rug, which drank it up in one gulp. There was a loud murmur in the house. One would have been forgiven for thinking that they were at a soccer match and the goalkeeper had conceded a goal. Uncle did not flinch. He just carried on with his squeaking voice, spraying his saliva at everyone in the room. The smell of beer merged into a fusion of scents and odors that filled the house. Tendo remembered how he had breathed deeply as he entered his room for the first time at varsity. It gave him hope that he could start again and rebuild the life of his dreams. And that was the sole reason why he studied harder than any of the students at varsity. He had worked so hard that he passed his first year cum laude, and that was the piece of news he was bringing home to his grandmother. She was too old to understand that language, but he just wanted her to know. Maybe he had hoped to have an intelligent conversation with at least one member of the family, but they were all preoccupied with their lives as usual. He was starting to feel like a stranger in his own home. His eyes filled up with tears as he stood at the door and lowered his back to the floor. His little sister was out playing as usual. She would stay out as long as she could daily, coming home just in time to bath and sleep. He would probably find her near the dumping site if he looked for her, he thought to himself. That was the other reason he always thought of coming home, his little sweetheart whom nobody cared for. He wiped his tears that had fallen down his face, picked up his bag, signaled to his cousin who sat in the corner, imprisoned by the little chair she sat in. She acknowledged his gaze and watched him turn away. "I'm out of here," he mouthed the words as he disappeared from the doorway. He may have shouted, but the noise in the house prevented him from being heard.